As you look to the corner of what will soon become your home office, you see a number of well-labeled boxes. Some contain furniture, some computer equipment, and some art that you ordered online. You feel confident you have all the elements. At least you have a picture in your head of how you want to use your office, and all these pieces are needed. Now it's time to put it all together. Hi, I'm Alana Gregory from IG Tech Consulting, and join me in this fourth chapter of our Change Management series, where we look at some of the tools that will help you in the planning, execution, and management of your change initiative. In other words, the tools that you're going to leverage to achieve your desired result. Tools. Aren't the models the tools that we use? Well, let's take a step back and review where we've been to understand where we need to go next. In chapter 1, we looked at the why. Why for change management. So why are you doing this change? And in every case, it was to drive a desired result. In chapter 2, we looked at some of the most common barriers to the success of your change. And then chapter 3, we looked at 3 common models, ADKAR, Kotter, and Lewin, which provide a framework for change management. Now in our fourth chapter, we're going to look at some of the tactics of how. So let's look at some of the tools that are going to help you be successful. Think of a project you implemented or maybe was implemented at work or at home. What was the biggest obstacle to that success? If you said employee resistance, you're not alone. In fact, ProSci found in their research that employee resistance was listed 5 more times than any other obstacle to project success. So how do we avoid, mitigate, and overcome? Well, let's look at some of the tools within change management that we can leverage to identify those risks that we talked about in chapter 2, but more importantly, to address them proactively. Before we start, let's first assess how ready our organization is for change and how much risk there is. So the question to ask ourselves first is, how ready and receptive is the organization for change? So think back to those change barriers, and from an organizational perspective, what might they be? Can you identify, even at the onset, any of those barriers that might be present? For example, is this yet another change in a slew of failed change initiatives or even successful change initiatives, but there's been a number, so your organization may have change fatigue? The second question to ask yourself is, how risky or big is this change? What is the severity of the change? Are we going to be implementing this in phases, or is this big bang or large scale? Answering these 2 questions will result in one of 3 scenarios, either low risk, medium or mid risk, or high risk. Now, just because you end up in high risk doesn't mean stop, do not move forward, but it may signal that there are some additional aspects and considerations, as well as additional effort that's going to be required to make sure this change is successful. In other words, to make sure you achieve your desired result or outcome. How do you use this information? We use it in a proactive way. That's right. We use it to build the right plans. Analysis and preparation are all about is what's going to be the key here in change management, just as it is in any other aspects of your life. So ensuring you have defined change management strategy, preparing the team, and developing a sponsorship model are all going to be key factors in setting yourself up for success. Yourself and your organization to achieve that desired outcome or result. In addition, how do you know if you're on track or what's needed from a tactical perspective throughout the change effort? Well, let's look at these 5 plans that are defined within the ADKAR model, and more importantly, how they support the building blocks for change management. So first, let's talk about driving awareness and desire. You'll see that there are multiple plans that are going to be leveraged to do this. Keep in mind that it's not linear, in that once we have awareness and desire at the onset, that no further effort is required. In fact, ensuring that there is awareness and desire continuously throughout the change effort is going to be critical. So while the level of detail, the message itself may differ as you're going through the change, it's not a one and done effort by any means. And to that end, you'll see that there's actually 4 of the 5 plans are engaged to drive awareness and desire. Before we talk about the next plan, let's take a moment to talk about the sponsorship roadmap, because sponsorship is going to be critical for success. A lack of competent sponsor is going to impact the likelihood that you're going to be successful. Now, when we say sponsor, what do we mean in the context of change management? Often one will look at a sponsor as who is providing the funding. So who's got the money, or who the most senior person is, and then that's the sponsor. While when we look at change management, the sponsorship roadmap is going to help you, because we want to make sure that the role of the sponsor is clear, but most importantly, they view the change favorably. They are a competent sponsor in that they have the influence, the budget, the knowledge of the role necessary. And then lastly, but not least importantly, is the time for those ABCs. If they don't have time to be actively and visibly engaged, building that coalition and communicating throughout, then they're not going to be an effective sponsor. Identify, assess, and plan so that your sponsor can be successful and impactful. Now let's talk a little bit about the plans that will support ensuring knowledge and ability. And let's take an example. You recently rolled out a corporate credit card to improve expense management, and you provided training, but after 6 months you do a compliance audit and you discover that 30% of the expenses are being charged through corporate credit cards. An email is sent out with a new training calendar. Sound familiar? While a training plan is absolutely a component of a successful change management strategy, if people don't know what or how to operate, or don't have the capabilities necessary to operate successfully in that future state, you're not going to be successful. However, training does not drive desire. Say that again. Training does not drive desire. So if your challenge is desire, then the training plan is not where you want to turn. The other part of that knowledge and ability is coaching. And so coaching, plan, and change management is really targeted towards supervisors and managers. It's about providing them with the support and outlining what support you need from them and what support they need to be providing to their employees as you're going through the change. Lastly, not least importantly as well, is that making it stick. Once the change has been implemented, in order to realize those benefits or desired outcomes, you need that future state to become the current state. This requires reinforcement, and the 3 plans which outline what needs to happen and when to drive that reinforcement is the communications plan, that sponsorship roadmap, and the coaching plan. This could be about celebrating quick wins, communicating progress status towards your goal, course corrections, etc. Overall, what you need to remember is that these plans should be living documents, reviewed, revised to address gaps, risks, or unanticipated obstacles that arise through that transition from current state to future state and beyond. And that concludes our video series on change management, the why, the what, and how change management can enable you to better achieve those results and that impact. Thank you very much for joining. I'd love to hear more about how you're leveraging or how you're looking to leverage change management. Add comments below or send an email to Alana at igtacconsulting.com.